And welcome back, everyone, to Who Would Win. Today's Who Would Win comes to us from Man's Little Helper. Well, that's the question: who wins in a fight, Leprechaun or the Tall Man? This is kind of a science versus magic kind of fight to a certain degree. The Tall Man, what the Tall Man is from Phantasms, a series of movies I've never actually watched myself, but I've heard decent things at least about some of the first few. Um, Tall Man Hold on. Phantasms. There we go. What the Tall Man actually is a little up in the air, I think. I mean, it's described that his species is human, but he's clearly gone beyond that after some point. Um, if I remember correctly, and I'm okay, here's the guy. Relatively little known about once upon a time was a kind-hearted soul named Dr. Jebediah Morningside, an ordained mortician who served as a medic for the Union Army during the American Civil War. He began experimenting with interdimensional travel and studying the connection between the worlds of the living and the realm of the dead. He does this to learn the mysteries of life and death, and even to achieve immortality. After perfecting his machine that would allow him to travel between the worlds, he set through the gateway. Upon returning, he was no longer Jebediah, but the cold and evil being known as Mike Pearson, and his friend Reggie as the Tall Man. I'm sorry, known to Mike Pearson and his friends as the Tall Man. It can only be speculated that while in the different dimensions, Bai was possessed by another intelligence, or that a physical likeness of him assumed by some otherworldly entity while killing the original. It might also just be that he experienced changes that changed him radically. His purpose began to become Lord of the Dead, and as such, he has become superhuman in his strength. He has telekinesis. Um, he is seen lifting a grown man with his bare hands. He also has many different fun little tech weapons, including his signature sentinel spheres, flying silver spherical objects, and that conceal many weapons inside them, from drills, lasers, saws, and many more. The spheres contain the brains of dead bodies that he crushes down into zombie dwarves, so he can also basically make homunculus. His dwarfish undead slaves that came from this hellish dimension that when he first traveled to. He can also physically control gravers and demon troopers psychically. While having few weaknesses, the Tall Man is shown vulnerable to cold temperatures, so, just tighten up. He's described as being nigh omniscient, nigh invincible, but this is within context. Like in his realm, he's nigh omniscient, but it's not like when he's in our world, he's nigh omniscient. But he has immortality, at least doesn't age. Regeneration, access to otherworldly technologies, genius level intellect, resistance to disease, enhanced strength, ability to make his severed body parts become independent organisms, which is unique. Can command his sentries. Oneiokinesis? What the hell is that? Kinesis. Kinesis is control, mental control, but oneiokinesis, I'm thinking that means okay. Dream manipulation. There you go. Shapeshifter, knowledge of alchemy, extrasensory perception, possession, paralysis inducements, clairvoyance, telepathy, necromancy, resurrection, illusion creation, teleportation, interdimensional travel, portal creation, BFR. I don't know what BFR is. Illusion create. Didn't we just do illusion create? We did just someone just repeat it. Just creation, invisibility, invulnerability, intangibility, penetration vision, or you could just say X-ray vision. Soul manipulation, time traveling, death manipulation, disease manipulation, dimensional manipulation, darkness manipulation, space manipulation, mind control, empowerment duplication, biological manipulation, temperature manipulation, technology manipulation, or technopathy, reality warping, and a lot of tolerance to pain. Now, on whatever level those are at is to be determined by like what we see in the actual movie. When asked how powerful the Tall Man is, he's described as being pretty powerful, but he's not necessarily an end all be all kind of threat, but he is dangerous and powerful. Excuse me, it's still early. The Leprechaun is just that, the Leprechaun. He is a little I would go so far as to say he's demonic in personality a little bit, but he's the titular character of that film series. Obsessed with me gold. He is shockingly physically strong for his size, but more to the point, and really in its whole, in his whole, but on the whole, really what makes the Leprechaun so dangerous is his magic. his magic is very unique in that there really isn't any set rules to it. It's more that he'll just kind of do what he thinks is whimsical or funny rather than like true dangerous. But that being said, like he's not going to just destroy the planet. He probably doesn't have that level of power. But what he does have is the ability to kind of just take hits, just physical hits. He can literally be dismembered, and his hands can move on his own, just as Tall Man's can. The difference is that his weaknesses, like confirmed weaknesses, are very niche. Iron will weaken him because it's a standard Fey lore. It's four-leaf clovers are a weakness of his. Beyond that, though, the only other thing that is implied to be a weakness of his is the reason he's so obsessed with his gold, not just because it's gold, is because that's where his power is contained. His power is influenced by the amount of gold he has. If he starts losing pieces of his gold, his power is nowhere near as effective. To the point where if he just does not have any of it on him, his power will be relatively weak, which does actually make some sense because when we first see him in the Leprechaun movie, he's very dangerous. But when we see him trying to attack the original guy who found his gold, he's weakened by the four-leaf clover, and therefore, he can't actually do anything. But for example, bullets stopped him with the four-leaf clover and basically kind of put him in like a paralysis state or a comatose state. But then after he wakes back up, he's mostly just kind of sneaking around. He has a little bit of magic, like the way he appears, but he's not able to really do much. I mean, his weaknesses are still applicable because like he can still be hurt and like again has his hand kind of chopped off a little bit, but once he had his gold back, he was able to do things like make that mini go-kart of death, teleport around and scare the cop, pogo a man to death. So he's just by summoning a pogo stick. It seems to be whatever it's whatever he kind of is in the mood to do. That's what it seems like. And then when we see him in later movies, for example, he grows. Well, actually, no, that was a laser beam that grew him massive. Although in theory, he should be able to do that too. He possessed a guy through his urine while he was taking a leak, and then birthed himself out of his Johnson. So there was that. Like he is surprisingly durable, but not infallible, and his magic is powerful, but is either limited or just by what he's kind of in the mood to do. He's not infallible, though, in terms of, like, magic, because anyone with comparable skills and levels of magic or higher, like, him versus Doctor Strange would be a no contest. Doctor Strange would win, because on a magical level, he far exceeds whatever the Leprechaun has demonstrated. But against someone, say, more like honestly, like a Harry Potter, lower level Harry Potter character, like a Hermione or a Harry. As long as you're not using Avada Kedavra, it'd be a lot more even of a match. So yeah, he's a unique character when you throw him in a match because where his limitations lie are kind of nebulous. Still though, against the Tall Man, would Tall Man's tech and more otherworldly abilities be enough to take down the Leprechaun? So I think he would definitely see the Leprechaun as a threat because this is not an individual like humans. This is an individual who's definitely more powerful than humans. So maybe he tried to convert him. Leprechaun's not having it, and a showdown of magic and sorcerer, alchemy powers go down. I could see his sentinel orbs trying to like quickly go after the Leprechaun. Maybe Leprechaun sees them and just like, nope, and just turns them maybe into like glass or something like that, or bubbles. And really, it'd be squaring off magic with science and then the supernatural elements that the Tall Man has. And the immediate problem here is the weakness versus weakness. The Tall Man's only known real weakness is cold, or what I call a weakness. One thing he does, and I'm going to just square that up a little bit better. The one thing he's really known to be weak against is cold. Does a Leprechaun, I guess, have anything beyond that to actually Um, uh, does he have anything to further to hurt him with? I would say his magic is probably strong enough to affect the tall man and maybe threaten the tall man. But then the reverse is, does the tall man actually have anything to straight out put the leprechaun down? Because yes, he got blown up in the first movie. That's because he was forced to swallow a 4-leaf clover. Um, so that weakened his body to the point where that would have worked. The tall man does have telepathy and telekinesis as well. So if he's got telepathy, he can pinpoint what the weakness of the leprechaun is. Now, does that mean he can just create the weakness? When it comes to 4-leaf clovers, probably not. But when it comes to iron, I mean, it looks like he had metal in that other world he was in. So I would have to imagine he probably has access to iron. But could he just summon it up there? That would be debatable. Can he just immediately summon it? Ugh. Leprechaun, if the Leprechaun sees him straight as a threat too, I would have to say that he probably wouldn't be effing around as much. He'd probably be taking the fight more seriously and therefore showing off like more of his, a little bit more of the, a little bit more of what he could actually do. So he would probably be pushing the tall man further and harder, but he'd have to know that the tall man's really one of the tall man's only weaknesses is actual cold weather. And the sentinels and all his tech and his gremlins would probably be annoying Leprechaun pretty hard, giving him enough time to probably create something of iron to bind him in there. An iron cage of some kind, or stick iron rods in him or something like that. So even though I think it would be a very drawn out fight with the two of them really taking hits from each other, I think the tall man would actually come out on top here because he does have telepathy and can, in fact, and I believe can read minds. And I don't believe the leprechaun is immune to such abilities. I've never seen him demonstrate any immunity to that. And so I'd probably go with the tall man here. It also doesn't help that the leprechaun wouldn't really be able to deduce the tall man's base weaknesses, while the tall man could definitely deduce the leprechaun's base weaknesses. So I would say tall man, definitely for the long run of the fight. Is there scenarios where the leprechaun can win? Absolutely. Not 100%. It's not like he's completely out of luck here. I'd say the leprechaun probably would have maybe like a 15 to 10, 20% chance of doing enough true physical harm, maybe even blowing him up at some point. If you, for example, if he somehow manages something like an explosive into him or something like that. But otherwise, I don't see him really keying into the main weakness, which is the cold weather. So I would probably go the tall man, but this is just my opinion. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. But thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.